Welcome to AI for UX. This is the space where UX researchers and product leaders stay current with AI innovation. So I'm John Whalen. I'm the founder of Brilliant Experience, and we're a psychology-driven product innovation consultancy. So personally, I've struggled to keep up with all these new AI tools for UX and product research. I'm guessing I'm not alone, and that's why I started this. And in each installment, we're speaking to a founder of one of the latest AI-enhanced tools to learn how you can use it, how it might benefit you, and kind of where it and the field are headed. So, and just a very quick note, these videos aren't product endorsements. We pay full price for any technologies we use, and no one's getting paid. The purpose is simply to learn about the new technologies together. So with that, let's get started. So today, I'd like to introduce Kwame. So Kwame Ferreira is a founder of Synthetic Users, and it's a tool that allows you to test your idea or product with AI participants and make decisions with confidence. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview with us. We're delighted to have you here.
Thank you. Very happy to
Yeah,
be here.
good. Well, honestly, let's dive in and talk about synthetic users, because it is a very different thing and really, generated a reaction in our sort of UX research world. So maybe you can tell me who you feel like the target audience is for your product and just kind of what sort of pain point it addresses.
So we've been live for roughly a year, and so we actually have some data on this. Whereas in the beginning we were like, "Ooh, this is going to be mostly for SMBs." We actually thought we would be like the Canva for research, right? Just like my mother's not going to go into Photoshop. There are a
Hmm.
whole plethora of businesses out there who just don't do any research, right? So we saw, oh, we can address that market, and it's a huge market to address. But it turns out that the people who really value our product the most, or have for the past year, have been directors of research, UX researchers, heads of products of very large corporations, who wake up in the morning and they feel the pain of not having research done in a timely manner, and that usually is like yesterday. Like, why don't I have the insight right now? You know what that feels like,
I
and
do.
so that's our target audience. I think eventually, as a startup, you want to start. We would ideally start with SMEs because it's compliance, and it is a lot easier. But hey, large corporations are the ones that really treasure what we have
Hmm.
to offer, and so that's our target audience right now. Within those
Yeah.
large corporations, quite varied, but yeah,
And,
that's where we're at.
okay, thank you. And I guess also just for people that have never used synthetic users, can you describe sort of a scenario when I might use this tool and literally kind of what does it do?
So we've, together with our users, we figure out that we are especially good at looking at the initial phases of a product lifecycle, looking for needs, um, and then, helping with idea generation, concept testing, are we going to go, should we go more to the left or more to the right with this particular product concept. So that's the initial part of the product lifecycle. We're not yet focused on development, and that means
Hmm.
when you effectively what you're going to build, and so you want to continuously iterate. That's a little bit harder for us right now. We're quite good then delivering value on the growth phase. So you've launched the product and you want to optimize it, right? Um, you want to ensure that it's actually maximizing its potential. And so I do believe we add a lot of value in that particular phase. If you want to pivot your product slash business, we've added value to a number of businesses in that phase. So yeah, those initial phases, and then growth is really where we're focused on right now.
Yeah. Okay. No, really interesting, and that's right in the center of the kind of things we do. So, yeah, that's one of the reasons I was delighted we got a chance to talk to you. Well, maybe you can just be really clear on what makes your product unique. Like literally, it's called synthetic users, and I guess people might not know that. Kind of what do I do? How do I interact with it? Are there actually real users? So what is this like?
So the synthetic users from the name is at the core of our value proposition. We've been, engineering this for a little over 2 years now to ensure that we create the best possible interviews in the market. And so it's really about creating an architecture that allows foundation models, large language models, with a lot of complicated engineering, to embody a particular user. And so the vision here really is that in the future, every business is going to have its synthetic users, just like they have their organic users or real users, right? And it's a pain to go after those organic users.
Mm-hmm.
It's expensive. You need to recruit. You need specialized people and companies such as yours to actually get that process done properly. So why not aim for a world where every business has their own synthetic users, and synthetic users are proactively reacting to the business itself and its products, and helping create and optimize those products on a real-time basis, right? So that's the vision behind it. We are so we're not into this is not about optimizing some sort of marketing strap line to see if that ad sells more than the other ad. Yes, we can do that. But I think what really sets us apart is the quality of our interviews, of our synthetic users. We've put a lot of thought and engineering into crafting these synthetic individuals. So you can run qualitative research for the time being. Very soon, within the next few weeks, actually, you'll be able to start running quantitative research. So, larger groups of synthetic users through surveys.
No, both are really interesting points. So I was actually going to ask you kind of how, what your vision is for how someone uses a tool like yours and how they might sort of think differently. So, today I might say, oh, I'll go and test, a dozen to 2 dozen people with a particular topic and understand more. But with synthetic users, I don't need to have a limit on necessarily on the number of people that I'm using, or kind of not sure, and you know better than me what's optimal. So how do you envision people, at least today, before we talk about the quantitative side, how would you recommend people use your tool today?
So you will, when you engage with a tool, you're going to create a number of interviews. It's a number of synthetic users and interviews by default, by consequence. So it's less about, that number is going to be a small number because qualitatively you don't need a big number to get to meaningful insight. What's important with synthetic users is that when you run that initial set of interviews, you have the possibility within synthetic users, which you don't have with organic users, to do follow-up questions. So at first, you might actually think, oh, these users are just telling me a lot of common sense stuff. And it's really down to you and how we like to see our product being used in order to really maximize value here. Double click, dive deeper, and you do that through follow-on questions that allows you to get at to get at insights that otherwise would, you might have missed. So that's how we like to see our product being used. The With regards to use cases, it really is so varied. Like we in the early days of this tool, we had a company. I had a company that was doing emotional wearables, and the tool helped us really develop a new product, right? And so we were developing the product with a tool. It's also ironically a tool that that we've used to develop itself, right? It's a little bit meta, but it does make sense when you because we're able to synthesize our users to an extent, and kind of foresee some of the insights that we do gather when we talk to our real users, and so a lot of the times when we talk to our real users, we already have we already have some idea of what they're going to say, right? And so we can actually probe a little deeper in particular corners of the conversation that might yield more insight in that particular conversation. So that this is how we see our tool being used. It's not really designed to replace organic users. Definitely not designed to replace UX researchers. In the beginning, we had a lot of pushback. Oh my God, we're being replaced. Not at all. It's purely designed to accelerate the research process, right? And a lot of the times we see UX researchers using our tool. They know they can better craft their interview script. They know, that's not the type of user that we're going for. We need a younger segment because we tried it already with synthetic users, and the answers we're getting weren't actually touching the subject that the way we wanted it to. So it helps you best prepare for the more lengthy, more expensive organic process, right? So that's how we see it being used.
Okay, no, that makes a lot of sense. And we actually, just before talking here, we mentioned like this is these tools are only going to get better and better. So it's really interesting to think about the future of this. We know one thing that's had a lot of press, so I just thought you should give you a chance to address is some folks worry about bias or hallucinations, things like that. I remember meeting an African American woman, and she was looking up how to do makeup, and when she searched for what she wanted, she saw a blonde, blue-eyed person, and it just didn't sync with what she needed. And how do you try to address these notions of bias, or even it just making things up?
It's really it's a good question, but a tricky one, because we rely on hallucinations, right? Like the reason why we exist is because LLMs are able to hallucinate, and to be more precise, to embody something that they're not, right? And respond accordingly, right? If an LLM was not able to have that suspension of belief, that wouldn't be possible, right? They would just like, I'm sorry, I'm not a 16-year-old from Alabama, so
Right.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm just the conversation is over, right? And so the power of hallucination is very important for our particular product. But that's just the beginning. That's the driver, right? That's the impetus. You then need to ensure that it's actually driven in the right direction. So from a bias perspective, what we're doing right now is, and what we have been doing for a while, we use a RAG, so it's retrieval augmented it, it, uh, it's really a way to ensure that you, for example, if you rag our system with global social surveys, right? Which, most countries will have their own version of it. And within it, you have a lot of data. And that data is real data, right? About how people feel about a particular subject, their opinions, their hopes. That data is also quantified. And so if you were to ask, for example, synthetic users just from the outset without ragging it, how are you male or female? You would find that the population would skew male. Why? Because the population of the internet is a little bit more male than the real world population, right? Because we're talking about the foundation models are actually trained on this corpus of internet data, right? And so that corpus has a lot of biases that through this RAG layer, we're able to clean out, so to speak. So that's deal with biases. We hear that it's fine to quantify their sets, public there, and that ensure that you are in the real world rather than the internet world, if you know what I mean. And so that's really important for us. But at the same time, we've actually had pushback in the opposite direction, right? And by that I mean we've had people come up and say, your synthetic uses are a little too eco, right? You ask them anything that's related to ecology, and like it's like, yeah, of course, we're completely green. We do recycle everything. I walk everywhere in the world, and we know that people aren't that way, right? And so we've had some pushback. Was like, looks, Kwame, your synthetic uses are a little too eco, right? Or they might be a little bit too woke on a particular subject, if I'm allowed to use that term. So it can actually swing both ways. Sometimes you really don't need them to be all that politically correct, because we aren't that politically correct ourselves many times, and we want to get to the truth of human behavior. That's really the point of what we're doing, so that we can help you guys accelerate and align your products towards reality, right? Rather than a made-up reality, which is not going to fundamentally add to your bottom line when you launch your products or when you're trying to optimize them later on. So that's how I would answer that particular question. It's a tricky one. We do need hallucinations because they allow us to be here, and from a bias perspective, we can ensure that we're less biased by using a lot of RAG, and being able to, we're just launching actually the day after tomorrow, annotations that will allow our users to not only annotate, but start giving us a little bit more feedback with regards to the quality of the interviews, although we can't really see those interviews because they're completely confidential. But the model is then able to kind of, okay, our users aren't really happy if synthetic user interviews tend to be overly ecological, or ecologically driven, for example. So yeah, that's where we are right now. It's just this constant tussle with this dance with AI.
No, I appreciate your thoughtfulness in your response, and clearly you're thinking deeply about this, and that's to be applauded. Kwame, we've talked about this a lot, but we haven't had a chance to really see the product itself. So actually, maybe I can give you a chance to show your screen, and you can tell us a little bit, show us how it works.
Thank you, John. So this is synthetic users. when you come into synthetic users for the first time, you're going to go through a walkthrough. I'm going to skip all that. The main interface has three columns, so audiences, problems, and solutions. And you'll see that you have 4 types of interview that you can run at the top, right? So a solution feedback interview implies a solution. So you'll have to kind of, type in a solution here, like a ring that you can gift your partner and lights up when you are happy. Amazing. This is for this particular audience that I've just input over here, called couples in long distance relationships. You'll notice that you have these little magic wands everywhere. So, for example, you might want to segment this audience further. So couples in long distance relationships might actually be too broad. And you might, international or met online. You are allowed with AI to kind of break that blank canvas problem, and just use these little magic wands to even infer particular problems. I had just inferred these ones over here, and so use couple in different time zones. Amazing. How do they maintain their emotional intimacy? And then is this a proper solution for it? You specify how many interviews you want to run, and then you generate your synthetic users. Okay. What the platform is doing right now is creating these users, and you'll see this is an interim step before you actually get to the interviews and then to the insights. And it's a necessary interim step because you want to ensure that you have the right users, right? And you can actually change a lot of these variables, right? How often they communicate per week, where they come from, so you're able to edit all this. And if you're happy, you can run the interviews, right? Right now, it's actually running 2 sets of interviews because you can compare. So we have couples in different time zones and couples in long distance relationships. They might actually be different. So we're running 2 sets of interviews right now. And this is really helpful if you want to compare to different groups of people. The interviews are being run. We use this ocean model, so the 5-factor model, which is the only scientifically proven way to actually map out personalities. And so you will see that all these are different individuals, the way they react to openness. Some are more conscientious than others. Some are more agreeable than others, and so forth and so forth. When the interviews are done, so the interviews are being run, this is an 8-question interview, and when the interviews are done, it basically says you're done, and you're able to create a report. Okay, it's taking a little while because it's actually running. So if I've asked for 4 or 5 each, so it needs to run 10 interviews. And the way it runs interviews is think of it as agents, right? So you don't ask everything at once. You don't put the audience and the pains and the solution. You throw you ask about a particular pain and you get a response back, right? And then you ask about another particular pain and get a response back. Because otherwise, the model itself would always have a propensity to try and please you, right? So you get very kind of shallow answers, and you're able to dig deeper because of the architecture that we've created. And where we're moving from an architecture perspective, whilst this is undergoing, is towards the dynamic interview. So custom interview is fairly self-explanatory. You put in however many, up to 10 questions that you already have have as a researcher. Dynamic interview, you just provide the goal, right? So you always need to define your audience, but you just provide the goal. And what it does is it's a multi-agent architecture. So it creates the synthetic users, but it also creates the researcher. And I know, we're not replacing researchers here, but it does an amazing job at recreating the researcher. And so you just let it loose. So you let the researcher loose with the synthetic users, and you have this organic conversation. I'm going to use the word organic here, no pun intended, but it depending on what the synthetic user or how the synthetic user responds, the researcher will rephrase or not rephrase, will react accordingly and create the next question, right? So in fact, what it's doing, it's running like a quasi-organic conversation that you don't know really where it's going. The only thing you know is that researcher has a particular goal. And so if the goal is to figure out, how 35-year-old moms in Houston relate to laundry products, for example, then that's the goal that the agent has, and that's what, and it will try and create the best possible interview, the best possible questions for the synthetic users in order to suss out the most amount of insight for that particular goal, right? So that's how this works. When the interviews are done, you can simply create a report. But what we see most users do is they go through the interviews, right? And the interviews are pretty deep. You'll see these aren't organic interviews. Organic interviews have a lot of yes, maybe. You don't have this over here, right? You are effectively talking to a synthetic user. At the end of it, you can literally go, well, tell me more about your challenges, right? Because you might not be happy with the whole challenge approach, concerns about the proposed solution and what type of challenges they may have, right? So you just ask for more, right? And you can ask for more and ask for more, and you're always going to get a slightly different. You live in a probabilistic world here, right? Nothing of this is deterministic, but there is something called the saturation point. And right now, you are. I thought I had hit the report button. I hadn't. Right now, you are asked to define how many interviews you want to run. I think towards the end of this year, our platform is not going to allow you to do that anymore, because what will happen is we will run as many interviews as it's necessary to ensure that you have all the topics covered, right? All the potential. There's not going to be anything left to potentially cover, and so. And obviously, we need to be reasonable because there's also only so much time in the world for you to actually read all these interviews. So, but there is an optimal number of interviews, and that really has to do with the saturation point, and we're literally architecting now a solution for that. So the report has a summary for those who don't really want to read that much, but then you have a lot of insight that comes through here. The snapshot, and you can export this in several formats, bookmark it, share it. You have different workspaces that you can invite your colleagues to. And yeah, for the time being, this is it. Within the next months, this interface is evolving. It's evolving to a more conversational interface. Right now, it's actually very rigid, and some people like it. I personally like it, but we need to take better advantage of the nature of the foundation model, which is inherently conversational. So just think of this as an evolving platform.
And if I'm right, so me as a user of your product, to be clear, like a researcher or product person, I would get both the interviews and the summary report.
Correct. You get the interviews and the insights, right?
I mean, I
That's
think.
yeah,
Oh
that's
yeah.
exactly it.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. As I tried this a little bit, I thought one thing that was interesting was I kind of walked away and was like, oh, I wish I asked this question. And unlike in real interviews where they're gone, I can actually go back to that participant three and ask a little bit more. So I thought it was really interesting that way. Well, cool.
Yeah, it's by far the most used feature. The
Okay.
ability to just, because you can always go back to your history, right? You have all
Hmm.
your history here. In this case, I just have this study,
Right.
but you can always go back here and open it, and then engage with it, right? It opens in a separate channel window. That's why you didn't see it. But you'll open it, you're able to share it, and you're able to have follow-on conversations.
Interesting. Well, actually, let me take thank you for showing us this. I believe that's sort of what you wanted to do as a quick show. Am I right? We sort of covered everything.
Yeah, yeah, I
Okay,
think we've
perfect.
covered everything.
No,
Yeah,
that's very. I mean, that's
you,
plenty. Don't. Well,
yeah, you
I
can
did.
feel free to edit it because it might get a bit boring.
No, it's fine. Well, let me actually take a big step back. I mean, it's pretty amazing that this can exist, and um, I believe you came from the sort of, in part, the consulting world. So, what inspired you to create this product and for this field? Like, how did you decide you wanted to
Yeah,
do this?
until a couple of years ago, I was really in the consulting world, as you very well put. I've since left it because this is, as you can imagine, more than a full-time venture. Um, the so I was creating products and helping to create products for about 20 years in all sorts of companies. But in the past 10 years, my own product consultancy. And we were working with the mostly Silicon Valley, big, Fortune 500s.
Hmm.
Um, always very product focused, always very solution oriented. And when we started playing with LLMs, about 3 years ago, we started seeing that LLMs had these emergent properties. And we started reading a lot of academic papers pointing towards this synthetic to organic parity when modeling human behavior. And we said to ourselves, as most, I'm sure there's, 100,000 companies out there that at the time were also looking at LLMs, and it felt a little bit like, the solution looking for the problem. Guys, this is
Hmm.
really cool, but what is the problem? And so we meandered, and we experimented, and at some point we just all sat down. I sat down with my engineering team with my co-founder, and we really looked at our lives, right? What we really need help with, and what we need help with as product people, as people who create products who eventually become businesses, is really better decision making around products, because it's very costly. To turn left when you should have turned right can mean the end of a
Hmm.
product line, right? Or the end
Yeah.
of potentially the end of a business. So there's all this talk about waste, right? Waste out there, but most of the waste really comes down to bad decision making.
Hmm.
And bad decision making comes down to not having enough insights. No one will do a bad decision if they have the insight, right? Of course. And so what happens is insight is, as you very well know, and you are an expert at this, insight is expensive, right? It takes time. You need to dedicate resources to it. And so when we started seeing these emerging properties of LLMs, it was just like, this makes perfect sense. Our biggest pain point was really user research, right? Waking up in the morning, okay, I need to recruit these people. They cost an absolute fortune. We were doing research for one of the biggest pharma companies in the world, and some of the researchers some of the participants that we were recruiting were very, very specialized individuals, right? Who their time is like the most precious. I even felt like bad just taking 15 minutes to talk to them, because they could potentially be saving somebody's life, as opposed to talking to a product designer. So that was the world we inhabited, until we started realizing that we can actually accelerate this whole process. We're not doing away with having those meaningful conversations at all, and I think it will be a while until we're able to. But as you very well put, this is the worst it will ever be, right? And if right now, in terms of parity, we have 85%, 90, above 90 in certain dimensions, like the moral dimension. I'm talking about synthetic users, synthetic organic parity. Then it's only going to get better. It's not going to get better. It's not linear. It's actually, I think it will actually take a lot to get here. Was fast, but it will take quite a while to kind of claw ourselves into the top 90s, right? But that's just a gut feeling, working with LLMs like we have for so long now. But that's why we did it. It's just, we really wanted to accelerate this whole process, which was quite painful for us. And we realized that there are other people out there who feel the same pain and who started using our product with exactly the same intention and the same results, right? But faster decisions, you're able to experiment more. I think there's a world of the real unlock here with these models is the ability to simulate worlds, right? They have so much power, simulation power. And why is that important? Because if it can work for drugs, if you want to create a new drug, you want to go into this whole iterative process. It takes years, hundreds of millions of dollars. The ability to simulate these, and we saw with what Google did with folding the proteins. It's absolutely amazing the level of acceleration that you're able to provide people with, and so it really is about compressing that time, making better decisions, and then when you go and talk to real users, you just you treat them a little differently. They become even more precious. Those conversations become more precious, and it's less about, you already know more or less what they're going to say, right? Because synthetic users will give you that. You will then focus on things that synthetic users might not be able to say, like personal accounts, stories that dive a little deeper into the personal sphere that's very idiosyncratic to a particular individual. Mind you, you're starting to get that with LLMs as well. But still, they do have an advantage there. But you go into that conversation emboldened, right? Like and conscious and aware. Okay, so this is, we've explored that already. Tell me more about that other thing that we haven't yet explored. So it's not so much about, they're not saying exactly the same thing. The true power of research then is looking at the differences, right? The deviation between organic and synthetic. In there lies the opportunity, right? Because that's not what, they're both saying the same thing. Well, great, right? No. That's where the synthetics didn't go there. The organics are actually going there. Okay, it's that little space. So it's the deviation that, as a researcher, as a designer, as a leader, that I'm looking for, because that's the space of opportunity. You can go to, we have a journal and a little science blog in our website, syntheticuses.com, and you can, that is a whole post around deviation. There's a whole a bunch of posts around how we measure parity, because it's important. It's the first question we're asked, right? Like, hey, how different are you from real users, right? Real participants, and so we're, every month we have to run organic interviews, and then we compare them, put them side by side. We create the code book. We do what we run things fairly old school, just to ensure that, look, we are, in terms of parity, we're still where we think we are, where we say we are, and these are the things we need to work on, right? And so that's us.
And actually, I did want to ask just a couple last things. So one was, you had mentioned just briefly about having more quantitative work, and I just wondered kind of how you see your product evolving the next while. And it sounds like there's something sort of imminent that's coming, and maybe you could just describe that briefly.
Yeah, we're working on it. Right now, it's really about qualitative interviews. There's a lot of power in that, but a lot of our users want the quantitative aspect as well. They want to be sure that this is. They want to be able to survey their particular population sample. That's what we're doing, and that's what we will be offering. It will come with a different feeling. Why? Because it's somewhere between an interview and a survey. It's like an intervey. If I had to come up with a new word. So what these interviews do is you have the ability to have a conversation with the people, right? With the synthetic users. I call them people now. I'm the type of old man that's starting to talk to their pets. I guess we all talk to our pets.
Sure.
So you'll be able to have these conversations. So you'll be able to. So you're not losing the qualitative aspect. You're just adding a quantitative aspect. So you'll be able to, ask a question to 100 people at the same time in just a few seconds, and get responses that align very well with what real users would respond, right? In terms of the quantitative, it's going to be hard for us to kind of hide. My co-founder Hugo always is dreading that. Dreading is perhaps too big a word, but there is some anxiety about going into that space because there's nowhere to hide, right? A qualitative interview, you can always, well, it's not good enough. Well, go a little deeper. Ask another question, right? The answer is as good as the question, right? You can always you always find a way to make it better, because the process feels organic. With surveys, it's pretty, like, I have this survey that I've ran. I want to know how many people prefer this pink dress to that blue one, and I've already ran it. I want to run it with synthetic users and just see. Oh, okay, yeah, it's completely different. This is rubbish, right? And so there's a real challenge there to ensure that we get it right. But we're pretty confident we are getting it right, and then we're in uncharted territory, because you're not only able to do the qualitative, you're able to provide quantitative value to your customers, and in just a few seconds. But yeah, it's look, that's our journey.
Hmm. And so, no, really, thank you so much for opening up that, seeing kind of your vision and where it's heading. So, as putting back on your consultant hat, or some, new one that you would say, here's what your world will be like in a few years' time, or even next year. How do you see how we do our work? I mean, maybe you've really described it, that there's this confluence of your synthetic users that are always available. You can kind of do continuous things plus other things. So, just yeah, where do you see this heading?
Yeah, we just wrote a little post about continuous insight. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's that that's really the reality we want from a product development perspective. We're pretty confident in product that products will create products, right? We'll get to a level. Right now, it's kind of humans um, creating products, or
Mm-hmm.
humans with products, with tools creating products. It will be like get rid like remove the human part and just products creating products for humans, right? Um, and the reason why that will be so, because creating products is very ultimately an optimization problem, right? You come up with some sort of hypothesis, and then you need to iterate, you need to adjust. Oh, let's go a little bit more left. Oh, people like it a little more. Okay, so paint it yellow. Oh yeah, that's even better. People are clicking much more on that. And so the
Mm-hmm.
this whole which seems completely utopian, or to some dystopian, world of products creating products becomes a bit of an inevitability once you have it's an integration problem between systems, right? Right
Mm-hmm.
now, when
Yeah.
we go multimodal, we're not there yet. You'll be able to, on the solution column, you'll be able to put in your prototype, your app prototype, right? And it will connect directly to Figma, and you are showing that prototype to synthetic users. But now imagine synthetic users were going to say, okay, yeah, that's great, but
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah.
the buttons are too small for me, right? Can you make them a bit bigger? And what happens now is that the user needs to go back, make the buttons bigger, right? But
Mm-hmm.
why, right? Like, can you make
Yeah.
them bigger? And then synthetic users can literally just tell that to Figma, make those buttons bigger. And Figma goes, okay, I'm making those buttons bigger. Synthetic users, are you happy? Yeah, we're very happy. Let's try with a different cohort. Oh, okay, here's a new cohort. Yeah, buttons are great, but now change this. And so it's this conversation that we're having now between with LLMs is
Mm-hmm.
going to be a conversation between LLMs and LLMs, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And um, and we will be the benefactors of that relationship, and that's the world we imagine we're going towards. Hopefully, for the first time, where we have some more free time, because there's always this promise of free time. Computers suddenly we won't have to do all this work, and now we're stuck to it. We're putting our computers in. We have goggles, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
computers are everywhere, and they're time sucking. Hopefully, it will be a different world. But yeah,
Yeah.
definitely a world where products create products. That's I think synthetic users will have a part to play
Yeah.
in that world.
Well, this, excuse me, this is so interesting. And honestly, I can't keep you all day, but this is, I really, really appreciate you sharing your vision and ideas, and also just that you've created this. I mean, it challenges a lot of our norms, but it also is the world we live in today. So I appreciate your vision there to get it going. If people actually want to give this a try, anything you wanted to mention? Nick, we went to syntheticulsers.com. Anything else you want to say about how people could get started?
Uh, Feel free to book a demo, either myself or Hugo, one of our reluctant engineers. They don't like to they don't like to do that much. But we're happy to demo this. I think it's so much better if we if you get it from us and we can guide you through it. But yeah, it's open. You can trial it for free for a few days. And yeah, right now we're really after meaningful feedback from you, not just our synthetic users. We need your organic feedback to make it better. So yeah, just go to syntheticulsers.com.
Well, great. Well, thank you again, Kwame. This is it's so interesting. This conversation was really stimulating for me, and yeah, I hope it lets our audience as well understand where kind of our future might be heading. So really for this interview, thank you, and really that's all for today. Thank you so much for tuning in and keeping up with the latest on AI for UX and product and discovery research. So subscribe if you enjoyed this, and let us know in the comments if there's other folks you'd like us to feature next. And wishing you all brilliant insights with AI.